Welcome back to the Crypto World channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now, Bitcoin is still bouncing from this exact area of support as one of the largest Bitcoin whales in the world just bought more Bitcoin, while the price is still repeating history in the short term as predicted, while Ethereum is still playing out this bearish divergence, and the price of XRP is only just holding on to this crucial level of support that we need to pay attention to. So I'll be talking about all of that and more later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, just before taking a look at the Bitcoin and crypto charts today, we need to take a look at some Bitcoin news today because Michael Saylor just once again announced that Strategy, previously known as MicroStrategy, has just bought more Bitcoin. And this time around, they bought over 4,000 Bitcoin, 4,048 Bitcoin for almost $450 million US dollars at an average price of close to $111,000 per Bitcoin. And in case you're wondering, Strategy, the company, now currently holds over 636,505 Bitcoin that they acquired for a total of almost 47 billion US dollars, which is now worth a lot more than that 47 billion. And now, as I've explained many times previously on the channel, these purchases don't necessarily have an immediate impact all the time on the price of Bitcoin due to the fact that they use, for example, TWAPs and OTC and things like that in order to reduce the impact to the price of Bitcoin, at least immediately or initially. But obviously, Bitcoin is an extremely scarce asset with a maximum supply limit of 21 million Bitcoin. So over time, as companies like Strategy and ETFs, etc., acquire more and more Bitcoin, of course, that means that there's less Bitcoin available for others to purchase. So if this demand keeps up, if we continue to see a lot of people and companies like this wanting to buy more and more Bitcoin, and there's only so much Bitcoin to go around, obviously, ultimately, at some stage, this will lead to a supply squeeze, which will ultimately force the price towards the upside to tempt some Bitcoin holders to sell their Bitcoin to these large buyers here, if of course these large buyers continue, which so far they have been doing. And so that is some Bitcoin news today. And if we're taking a look at the Bitcoin price charts today, looking at the weekly Bitcoin price chart, for now the super trend indicator is still sitting in the green, indicating a larger bull market. But obviously on this weekly Bitcoin price chart, as I've been talking about over the last 1 month or so, we have a major bearish divergence, meaning we're most likely going to see either a pullback or at least some sort of larger slowdown, lacking bullish momentum for a period of weeks, if not months, as a very likely scenario. And obviously over the last 1 month, this has already been playing out as I've been warning about since over a month ago. And if we're taking a look at the 3-day Bitcoin price chart, we're seeing potentially a small change in the momentum here in the MACD indicator on the 3-day time frame. Looking at the histogram in the MACD indicator, it's no longer actually heading in the bearish direction and potentially starting to head back towards the bullish direction, towards a bullish crossover. This is the first sign that we're seeing, obviously, a change in this possible short-term bearish momentum, now flipping possibly a little bit more bullish, but obviously this is still a very early signal and not yet fully confirmed. And so overall, based on the situation on these larger timeframes here, it's still likely that in the coming days or weeks, we could likely still be lacking bullish momentum, especially over the next 1 to 2 weeks. For example, we may not necessarily see significant bullish momentum, maybe short-term moves, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But in terms of the larger momentum, especially on the larger timeframes, we're still showing signs of weakness. But once again, we do have that very early signal, which I will pay attention to in the coming days if it ultimately confirms, that could start confirming a little bit more of a relief. But overall, still showing weakness once again. That's basically the situation on the slightly larger timeframes. But on the daily Bitcoin price chart, obviously in the shorter term, we're continuing to bounce from my exact area of support here, the golden pocket area of support, sitting in between around 106.7K to 107.6K. So at roughly 107 to 108,000, basically just above 107,000, we have a lot of support right there. And if we're looking at where the price of Bitcoin actually bounced from, it's precisely in that area that I've been talking about over the last half a week or so. And in case you're new to all of this, the golden pocket, this area right here, is the most important Fibonacci area on the price chart based on the Fibonacci levels here. And if we were to actually break below that area with candle closes confirming below that area, especially if we fail to get back above that area. In that situation, the next target based on these Fibonacci levels would be sitting at around 103,500. But if we're zooming into the shorter term, taking a look at the 4-hour time frame, we can see that right now and over the last 1 to 2 days, we've been perfectly playing out this short-term bullish divergence exactly as I've been predicting over the last couple of days. Obviously, for the last couple of videos here on the channel over the last couple of days, I've been saying history is repeating. We've confirmed a new bullish divergence here. We're likely going to see just a slight bullish relief over a couple of days like what we saw back here, but a bullish divergence by itself does not necessarily guarantee a massive high momentum bullish reversal out of this bearish trend. Obviously, what happened last time was a short-term bullish relief. Yes, we saw some bullish price action, but once again, we were still remaining within this shorter-term bearish trend, forming lower highs and lower lows. And so that's why I look at multiple different timeframes. As always, understand the difference between the different timeframes. On the slightly larger timeframes, still overall showing a lot of weakness for potentially the coming weeks, which means if we see a short-term bullish divergence on a smaller time frame or a short-term bounce from a key point of support, it may end up being just a short-term move, as in it's short-lasted before possibly reversing soon enough, maybe in a couple of days from now. And so at the time of recording this video, this bullish divergence is technically still active on the 4-hour time frame, which means it is entirely possible we could see potentially a little bit more of a bullish relief moving forward, maybe over the next few hours or over the next 1 or 2 days. Could be a likely scenario, but just be aware of those risks of still lacking bullish momentum on the slightly larger time frames. Of course, this bearish divergence on the daily time frame, along with the bearish divergence on the weekly time frame, still technically confirmed, which ultimately suggests once again maybe we see maybe a slight little bullish relief like this, which we've already started to see over the last 1 to 2 days, but we've not yet confirmed a reversal out of this bearish trend. So ultimately, it's quite likely we could see another move to ultimately continue the current trend. And if we're taking a look at points of resistance where the price could possibly reject from, obviously we do have a bit of short-term resistance at roughly 110,000, which we're kind of struggling a little bit around 110, 111,000. But above this area, we have a significant level at roughly 112,000. Also a bit more short-term resistance at around 113.3k. More short-term resistance at 114,500 and a significant level at 117,000. And if we're taking a quick look at the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, we can see right now we still have some short-term liquidity at roughly around 114,000, around 116,000, and a small amount at around 117.6k to 117.8k. And so it is possible, once again, if this bullish divergence remains active, which at the time of recording this video, it is currently active, it's possible we maybe take out a little bit of this upside liquidity, maybe closer towards 113.7k to 114k as a possible price target. But keep in mind, we're still lacking bullish momentum. So if we see a short-term bullish move, it may be short-lasted. And of course, the major area of liquidity we all need to be paying attention to right now on the Bitcoin liquidation heat map is actually below the price, sitting at around 106.8k to 107.1k. So at roughly 107,000, basically right around these lows, just underneath these lows right here, we have a lot of liquidity right there. And so the picture that all of this information is painting is potentially a little bit more of a short-term bullish relief towards some of this upside liquidity, at least while this bullish divergence is still currently active. But then soon enough, maybe in a few hours from now, maybe in a few days from now, at some point in the shorter term, it's likely we could see another pullback to ultimately continue the current trends that we're already in. We've already been playing out this trend, which is obviously a bearish trend, to maybe at some stage in a few days from now, for example, take out the downside liquidity. And obviously, so far, it's already perfectly playing out. As I've been saying over the last few days, history is still repeating, at least for now. And of course, this is the time in the market where you need to be set up, ready to go to take the next trading opportunity as soon as it happens. And personally, I take a lot of my crypto trades over on BTNX, so I'll make sure to leave a link to BTNX below this video in the description and in the pinned comment. And if you use that link, it'll take you to this page right here where you can claim some massive bonuses and enter into a 25,000 USDT prize pool, basically free money from the exchange, just just by trading crypto. So if you're going to be trading crypto anyway, you might as well check this out. Once again, first link below this video. And in case you're wondering, Bitfinex is a no KYC exchange, which means you can access it from basically any country in the world without needing any KYC. But as always, check your local regulations when it comes to trading crypto. And for whatever reason, if you don't want Bitfinex as an exchange, there's also Pinex as another exchange out there that I also trade on. So I'll also make sure to leave a link to Pinex below this video. And if you use that link, it'll take you to this page right here where you can also claim some massive bonuses. Like for example, if you simply just make an account, takes about 60 seconds to do this, make an account, complete KYC, you get a free $50 bonus onto your Pinex account, but only if you use that link. If you don't use that link, you can't claim any of these bonuses here. And there's also deposit bonuses. So for example, if you deposit $100, you get a $100 bonus, or if you deposit up to $10,000, you get a $1,000 bonus onto your Pinex account. But remember, all of these bonuses here are only available if you're using the links below this video to those exchanges to actually make your account to claim these major bonuses here. And in case you're wondering, yes, you can access Pinex without KYC as well. But with that being said, taking a look at the Bitcoin dominance chart on the 3-day time frame, and of course in my last video just yesterday, I mentioned that we're starting to see a bit of a short-term bounce in the Bitcoin dominance. And over the last 1 day since my last video, this short-term bounce has continued a little further. And so obviously, like I explained in my last video, while we're seeing the short-term bounce, this is not good for altcoins. Of course, if we see a dump in the Bitcoin dominance, that is good news for altcoins, especially the major altcoins like Ethereum, for example, over the last 1 month, give or take, has performed very nicely, especially compared to Bitcoin. But once again, in the short term, while we see these little bounces here in the Bitcoin dominance, that is not good for most altcoins. Of course, some altcoins here and there will still perform pretty well, but most altcoins are going to do worse than Bitcoin if the Bitcoin dominance is bouncing or if it's bullish. And so while we continue the short-term bounce, once again, maybe over the next couple of days or so, this is not good for altcoins. And we're already starting to see that a little bit in the shorter term for Ethereum with a little bit more of a short-term pullback. But ultimately, we're still in this sideways price range on the 3-day Ethereum price chart, sitting in between this support and this resistance. First of all, this area of support is still sitting in between around 3.9K to 4.1K. And this area of resistance is still sitting in between around 4.8K to 4.9K. And considering how significant this area of support is and how significant this area of resistance is for the price of ETH, it's likely we will stay within this sideways price range, at least for a little longer, at least for the next few days, maybe longer, maybe even a number of weeks, but at least in the next few days, I do expect the price to remain in this sideways price range, which means if we test this support, for example, expect a bounce closer towards this support, and vice versa. If we test the resistance, expect continued resistance, a lot of rejections from that area. But if we're zooming into the slightly shorter term, looking at the daily Ethereum price chart, technically speaking, this bearish divergence is still active, still affecting the price of ETH, at least in the shorter term, which means at least while this is playing out, we should not be expecting a lot of bullish momentum. And obviously, I've been saying that every day over the last 1 week, and that's exactly what we've seen as expected, a lack in bullish momentum, showing a lot of weakness. Overall, seeing just a slight little pullback and also a lot of choppy sideways price action in between, which is the most common outcomes, the most likely outcomes from a bearish divergence. And also, one thing that I'm watching right now for Ethereum is, of course, this daily Ethereum RSI, which is currently testing the center of the RSI, the 50 level in the daily Ethereum RSI. And the last couple of times we tested around this level, we actually bounced in the RSI. But if we start breaking below this level right here, which has been support in the daily Ethereum RSI over the last few weeks, over the last 1 month, if we break below this level, break into the lower high of the RSI indicator, or the lower half, I should say, of the RSI indicator, the last time that happened, we actually saw a quick little dump over the next few days for the price of Ethereum and obviously the RSI. And so definitely keep an eye on this RSI. If it continues showing weakness, especially if we start breaking that 50 level, that could potentially result in a bit of a short-term dump for Ethereum coming in the next few days. So keep that in mind. And of course, also pay close attention to the Bitcoin dominance. If we continue a bounce in the Bitcoin dominance, that's not good news for altcoins, which will likely increase the probability of that dump in the price of ETH if we continue to see a bounce in the Bitcoin dominance. And if we're taking a look at the price of Solana on the 2-day time frame, right now Solana is still retesting and still currently finding support in this exact area that I've been talking about, sitting in between around 190 to 200. And so obviously that is still the area of support to watch out for. And for the bulls out there, it's very important we continue to hold above this area, because if we, for example, see candle closes confirming below around $190, and especially if we fail to get back above 190 to 200, in that situation, we'll likely see a drop down towards around 167 to 170 as the next key level to watch out for. We also have a bit of short-term support at roughly 180 as well. But obviously right now the price of Solana is still holding that as support, which is good news at least in the shorter term while it's happening. And of course the trend for now is still currently bullish, forming higher lows and higher highs, despite the fact that just in the shorter term we're currently cooling off a little bit, lacking that bullish momentum just in the short term. And if we ultimately continue more of a bounce from this area right here, we should expect some resistance around this local high at roughly 215, and above that the next major point of resistance to watch out for based on this Fibonacci level is sitting at around $230. And if we're zooming into the shorter term, of course, one of the reasons as to why we're cooling off, lacking bullish momentum just in the short term is due to the fact that this bearish divergence is still playing out, still influencing the price of Solana, at least in the short term. As I've already been warning about since back here, I've been saying since then, expect most likely some choppy sideways price action and a slight pullback as a very likely scenario in the coming days from that point onwards. And obviously from that point, that's exactly what we've seen as predicted. But considering the fact that the price of Solana is now running into a very strong area of support, which historically has been strong resistance and recently strong support, it is likely that while this is technically still active on the 6-hour time frame, meaning a lack in bullish momentum, it's likely will not necessarily pull back much further, at least in the coming hours or over the next 1 or 2 days, considering we're running into this strong support, which is supporting the price, avoiding further bearish price action, which means we're most likely going to see maybe a bit of choppy sideways price action over the next 1 or 2 days is a very likely scenario. And obviously also keep a close eye on what the Bitcoin dominance is doing, because if we continue to see a strong bounce in the Bitcoin dominance, that will be bad news for Solana and a lot of the altcoin market. But for now, those are my expectations moving forward. And if we're taking a look at the price of XRP on the weekly time frame, we're technically still playing out the massive bearish divergence. So this has not changed. We're still playing out a major warning signal, lacking bullish momentum, likely going to see a larger pullback at some point in the next few weeks or months, is exactly what I've been saying every day for over a month now, since almost all-time highs, since around $3.40. I've been saying expect a larger pullback on the larger timeframes over weeks, if not months. And obviously since that point over a month ago at $3.40, that's already exactly played out as predicted and will likely continue into September. And if we're taking a look at this daily XRP price chart, for now we're still finding support around this previous low right here, sitting at roughly 275 give or take. But if we start breaking below that low with candle closes below 275, especially if we fail to confirm back above that level, in that situation the next major target is this area sitting in between around 255 to 262, and the next resistance to watch out for if we see a bit more of a bounce is in between around 285 to 290. And if we're taking a look at this daily XRP price chart, once again, we could see that support at roughly 275, which we've come very close to actually breaking below that level. But once again, we've not yet really confirmed any daily candle close below $2.75, at least not yet, but we're only just holding onto this support. So it's still likely at some stage we could break below this level, which is a risk we need to be aware of, because obviously right now we're still possibly forming a descending triangle pattern, which historically speaking, statistically speaking, is a bearish price pattern. It is technically bearish price structure, forming lower highs and relatively horizontal lows, meaning we have basically the buyers just staying where they are, not really increasing buying pressure or demands for XRP, whereas the sellers are obviously increasing in numbers, wanting to sell XRP, which is why we're seeing the lower highs. As soon as we see a little bounce, people are trying to sell their XRP, and people are not really looking to buy a lot of XRP, is what we're seeing in the price structure. That is simply the fact of the matter, seeing horizontal lows and lower highs. And in case you're wondering, this line of resistance is currently sitting at around $3. So if we were to see a bit more of a short-term bounce, and if we break out back above around 285 to 290 acting as resistance, above that, once again, we have more resistance at roughly $3. And if we actually confirm daily candle closes below $2.75, and especially if we fail to get back above that area, in that situation, that would confirm a massive bearish price target for this bearish price pattern right here. But remember, at least for now, we've not yet confirmed the break to the downside, which means we've not yet confirmed the pattern or confirmed the price target. And if we're taking a look at the price of Chainlink on the daily time frame, we're still obviously cooling off, showing a lot of weakness in the shorter term as expected. And we recently just broke below a bit of short-term support, which was sitting at just above $23. So now that we're below $23, it's likely we could find a bit of resistance at around 23 to 23.30, and above that we have more resistance in between around $24.50 to $25, and of course strong resistance at close to $27, as I've been saying since before we perfectly rejected from that resistance. And the next support to watch out for if we continue a bit more of a pullback here, first of all, we have support based on this previous low sitting at roughly $21.50, so really just above $21, but in between around $20 to $21. That area is a crucial area on the price chart based on this Fibonacci area, and also based on previous resistance now acting as new support in between $20 to $21. And for as long as the price of Chainlink remains above that area in between $20 to $21, technically the longer term trend or the larger price structure is still technically bullish, despite seeing short-term pullbacks or short-term bearish trends along the way during the much larger bullish trend. So once again, it's entirely possible this is just a short-term bearish trend during a larger bullish trend that we ultimately continue later on for as long as we hold above $20 to $21. If we break below that area, below $20, that'll be a significant change to the bearish direction in the larger price structure. And of course, one of the main reasons as to why we're cooling off right now for the price of Chainlink, showing a lot of weakness, lacking bullish momentum, is due to the fact that we're still playing out this massive bearish divergence on the daily Chainlink price chart, which I've been warning about every day since basically these highs right here, close to $27. I've been saying expect a lot of weakness and cooling off for the price of Chainlink. Expect maybe a bit of a pullback or some choppy sideways price action along the way as the most common outcomes, the most likely outcomes from a bearish divergence. And so obviously over the last 1 to 2 weeks, this has been perfectly playing out as predicted, and this could likely continue moving forward in the coming days, maybe over the next 1 week, considering at least for now it is still technically active, which means it's still influencing the price of Chainlink. But remember, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of any crypto, check out the links below this video to those exchanges if you want to claim those massive bonuses that are only available using those links. And if you want to actually know how you can trade crypto no matter what the price is doing, then make sure to watch these videos popping up right here on your screen. The video in the top left shows you how you can profit from bullish or bearish price action using long positions or short positions, and the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.